Hi, Chris Newman here. Today we're going to have a good look at New Zealand's constitutional documents. And in this presentation we're going to run through a series of documents going from about 1770 through to 1860. 90 years of them. A lot of folk believe that there is a base for New Zealand's arrangements to be found within these constitutional documents. So let's explore that. We'll go through them one by one and show the progression from a simple lawless frontier where there were chiefs and tribes and people, settlers living here without any particular arrangements, through a series of steps that bring us to the modern nation. So we're looking at the path from the lawless frontier to the British-based common law and self-government. We are going from frontier to colony to nation. So let's see how that works. The very first document that most people would overlook, and yet it's significant, is Captain Cook's 1770 map of New Zealand. He mapped the coastline of the country with such accuracy that his charts can still be used by navigators today. Important to note in this is that Captain Cook refers to New Zealand. So even in 1770, at the very beginning, the name New Zealand was accepted as the correct and true name of the country. Not Aotearoa, not any other invented name, but New Zealand, which derives from the name given to it by Abel Tasman. That's another story. So let's look at that. Captain Cook's map of coastal New Zealand defines the boundaries or the physical geography peripheries or borders of the country physically. Now the next thing that happens, and this of course was pre-King George IV, who reigned in Britain from 1820 to 1830. At that time Australia was a colony and had an influence down here in New Zealand. 1835, James Busby, who was the resident here, appointed from Australia, wrote many letters, but one in particular, the Declaration of Independence, which was signed by 29 chiefs and nowadays is called Wakaputanga, he sent to King William IV. And King William IV received this notice from his subjects in the far-off colony with good grace and dignity and honour. And he knew that this was a suggestion coming from the ends of the earth for local rule of law. It took until 1839 when Queen Victoria, through her office in London, Lord Normanby took instructions or developed instructions under Queen Victoria's rule to Captain Hobson, who was sent to New Zealand on behalf of the Queen to invite the locals to join through a treaty in the British plan of common rule or common law. Now to introduce this, their consent was required. So Captain Hobson in 1840 issued Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which was in the Maori language. Why? Because the majority of the people here were Maori and the consent of the Maori chiefs and tribes was required before British rule or British common law could take root and grow on these islands. So the treaty was signed in the end by 512 chiefs, and there were 9 representatives for the people of New Zealand who were already Queen Victoria's subjects. And through this treaty we see the British plan to introduce common law is moving now into some sort of agreement. Not a contract, but an agreement. And the 3 parties said they would move forward. As soon as Queen Victoria received dispatch from New Zealand in late 1840, she issued her Royal Charter and Letters Patent, a magnificent and beautiful document, beautifully written, an illuminated manuscript they call it, which gives Captain Hobson now the authority to become Governor Hobson and to erect a colony on these shores defined by Captain Cook's map of New Zealand, and all the way through there's reference and respect for the chiefs. So the Royal Charter and Letters Patent enabled now Governor Hobson to form the legislature, and he did this in Auckland. And this is the substance of rule. He established the organs of the legislation and an administration. So now we're moving into the early stages of a colony. So we're starting to get the form for the institution of laws and common statutes. The foundation is now appearing from these earlier intentions and hopes. Now in 1842, the legislature passed the New Zealand Constitution Act, which reflected the ideals of the Westminster Parliament in London, and which is our mother parliament. And this 1842 Constitution Act is like the first step. It symbolises that the people in New Zealand were starting to take responsibility for their affairs and starting to organise them, modelled on the Westminster Parliament system, the British common law and statute. Not the tikanga of the chiefs and tribes, not the old lawless ways that had been here before, but we're moving into civilised modern society step by step. The next interesting thing that happened in 1860, the Kauimarama Conference, which was held in Mission Bay, and the buildings that it was held in still exist there, the old mission station down on the foreshore. It's made of volcanic rock, a beautiful building under the big Norfolk pines. That was where the chiefs, 112 chiefs, the governor, and a lot of the people assembled, and the chiefs ratified the treaty. Some of the chiefs from 1860 had been signatories of the 1840 treaty, which is very interesting. So they'd had 20 years of observing the efforts and investment of all those delegated by the Queen and by the Parliament to form the colony in New Zealand, and the chiefs knew that this was a process that was going to take time and that the steps were moving forward, and they honoured their agreement. They said, yes, we stick with the Queen, we stick with this arrangement, we reject this independent king idea from the Waikato tribes, and we go forward, and we also reject the rebellion going on in Taranaki. We go forward with the governor, we go forward as subjects of the Queen under British common law, we accept statute, and so the development of local rule in New Zealand started to flower with the support and endorsement of the Maori leadership for the British system of rule. So the constitutional documents of New Zealand can be summed up in this particular period from 1770 to 1860, Captain Cook's charter of the geography, Busby's letter and requests for order, and the chiefs joining him, a small group of chiefs, let's get some local rule of law. And then the treaty bringing in the formal request, opportunity for people to consent, and the people being the chiefs and tribes and the local settlers. Everybody agreed. Now we move through the Royal Charter into the forming of the organs of state. Captain Hobson becomes Governor Hobson. Now we see the progression from the form of the law into the substance of it, the establishment of the organs of legislation, and then we get the endorsement from the chiefs as they saw the processes moving through, and we build the nation, frontier to colony to nation. So our constitutional documents summarise and prove without a doubt there was only one rule. Everybody starts from the common law and moves into statute. The whole of the nation forms. The chiefs and tribes join with the rest of New Zealand. There was no separate development. There was no separate rule. It was an agreement that everybody honoured and moved forward with the best of intentions. And at this time in history, I think it's really important for us to understand the clarity that this diagram, that this sequence brings. And these are the critical steps on the way, and they occurred with the full blessing of the Queen, the Westminster Parliament, the chiefs and tribes, and all the people of New Zealand. So I rest this summary and overview right here, and I hope that this has cleared up an awful lot of matters that might have been questioning in your mind, that might have been questions and questioning about really what was and what is the constitutional foundation for New Zealand. It's quite obvious and very simple. Thank you.